Hello and welcome. You're viewing the Citizens Journalist podcast, Mesa County Compass, that brings you the news that you can use from a different point of view. I'm Ruth.
I'm Lisa.
And together we are Mesa County Compass. Our goal is to create an informed, current, active citizenry armed with the facts. We will be covering what's new to you, what it means to you, what you can do about it, and provide you access to the decision makers when we can. All right, good afternoon. We're here with Mesa County Compass, and today we are interviewing Dr. Frank, who is a world-renowned physicist, and he'll give us a little bit more about who he is and what he does. Welcome, Dr. Frank.
Well, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. I am a physicist. I have 60 scientific peer-reviewed publications. I also taught for many years at a special school for gifted children, which is why people say, "Oh, you're a math teacher." Ah. But it wasn't just regular math. I was teaching super duper high IQ kids, advanced calculus and all that kind of stuff. But nothing wrong with being a math teacher. I love doing that, science and math. But I was a businessman. I left academics in 1996. I had a very successful academic career. Nomination for Nobel Prize in 1990. I was world famous. I made a discovery. So people got to know me as a scientist and teacher. Mm-hmm. But I'm also, the real reason that people know me now is because of an obsession I've had since college. I'm obsessed with modeling. And once I learned differential equations and Fourier transforms, I can model anything. I love it. It's like I model sunspots, I model climate, I model elections, I model, you name it, I'm modeling it, epidemics. So you can imagine what 2020 was like for me. I was modeling epidemics and elections, right?
Okay, and I'm going to stop you because some people might not know what that means to model.
Very good. So let's say a model, here's a simple model. There are 4 seasons, right?
Yes. Okay,
if you track the weather for many decades, you're going to see this interesting pattern in the weather. Well, you could start to put an equation on that to describe that, and you could start predicting the weather, couldn't you? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you had enough data going into your model, weather models, that's what they do. They put in data and then they predict the weather. And they don't do so good on weather these days, do they?
They don't.
There's a lot of variability there, but that's the idea. So a model, if, for example, when I was predicting elections, I would include multiple factors and then I would make predictions based upon that. And I had a perfect record on elections until 2020. And I even predicted Trump was going to win in 2016, 13 months ahead of time, which was surprising to people. They were saying, "Why are you predicting that?" Well, here's why. Here's all the math. So I'm a modeler. And I was modeling epidemics since AIDS in the early 80s. And in other words, each one of these little obsessions that I came up with of modeling were related to my own community. So I grew up just north of San Francisco in Northern California, and AIDS was a big deal.
Yeah.
Right then.
Absolutely.
And so I had teachers that were gay, I had friends that were gay, and AIDS was a big deal. And so, hey, this is a real thing. And once I learned Farr's law, which is a first order differential equation, I learned it in math, and I was like, okay, let's go. So I've been modeling epidemics, and you get the idea. That's what I mean by modeling. Mm-hmm. You can predict, for example, when an epidemic starts off, it gets really high, and then it tails off. Why does it tail off? Well, because people that are going to die have, and people that are not are getting over it, and you get herd immunity. After a while, the virus is already spread and nobody's left to get sick. And there's a shape to that curve. And so, anyway, that would be a model.
Yeah.
And so, good question. But so that's what I am, and that's what I was doing all 2020 in COVID, which is how I got connected to Colorado.
Okay.
Right.
Because in Colorado, they wanted to shut your churches down.
They did indeed, yes.
And so I got a call one day from one of your residents here in Mesa County. She called me up and said, "Hey, Dr. Frank, I see you're an expert at COVID modeling, and our state is trying to shut us down, and they've written their justification out in a report. Would you look at that report for me?" I said, "Sure." So she sent it to me. I looked at it. This is crap. So I wrote a rebuttal, sent it back, turned it into your state. And so your states had to say, well, okay, I guess we don't have a good justification. So they wrote a new justification, a little more scientific this time. And so now I'm your friends. So they sent it to me again, and I wrote another rebuttal. So we were going through that cycle all of 2020. I kept your churches open.
Great.
I'm not taking credit, but
No.
I was helpful.
You were
Yes.
helpful, yes.
Helpful, and that's kind of how I got introduced to Colorado in the first place. And then the next thing was Pennsylvania, and I think you wanted me to talk about
Yes.
that. So when the election happened in 2020, and it was kind of COVID was happening all year, and politicians were contacting me from around the country. And then the election happened, and so I had all these politician friends from all around the country. And I got invited by the state of Pennsylvania to be on the team of auditors. They were auditing the election. Doug Mastriano, state senator there, had requested an audit. It got national attention. And boy, oh boy, did I learn a lot of things that I didn't know were happening in elections. It was an eye-opener for me. And so then I'm a modeler. So what was I doing? I was developing models to predict things in elections so that I could find things that deviated from the model. Anything that deviates, what's that? Maybe that's something going on. So I was going around the country trying to find clean elections. And I had talked with your people here in Mesa, and I knew that it was conservative. And so I called up Sharona Bishop, and I said, Sharona, I'm looking for a clean election because I'm modeling elections. Did you have a clean election here in the spring in Mesa County? And she says, oh no, Dr. Frank, it was horrible. We had 5 out of 5 of our city leaders were elected, and they're like, oh, really, to the left. And we're a conservative community. This doesn't make any sense. Would you come out and look at this? So that's how I got introduced to Mesa County, was I came out here and began working with your elections. And that's kind of led to the whole Tina Peters thing. And anyway, so that's why I'm sitting here today, I think. Because COVID first, and then your election, and then Tina Peters. And so that's... Now today, in your state, the reason I'm here today is because... I've been trying to go around the country. I've been going around the country for several years now, organizing small red counties to stand together and say, we're not going to let the state control our elections anymore. We want to control our own elections. The system that the state is imposing on us is allowing fraud into our elections, and we want to protect the constitutional rights of our citizens. So I've been going around the country organizing small red counties. I wouldn't call Mesa a small red county. But where was I all last week? I was in the San Luis Valley organizing all those small red counties. And then a couple of days ago I was in Delta. And yesterday I was in Garfield. And I would like Mesa County to join in with them.
Right.
But I don't think it's the same. In a big county like this, it's difficult to get people to make a political stand. But we might just pull it off. I don't know. After the meetings I've been having in Mesa, I'm starting to get optimistic. The lessons I've learned are that if we try to stand independently, let's say that Mesa County says, we're going to fix our elections, taking 7 steps. We're going to take back our elections. Well, what would happen if you did that? The state would just come down on you like a load of bricks. So we don't want independent counties to stand by themselves. We want a bunch of counties to say, look, we all have the same problem. It's the same problem that the state is imposing on us, so we're going to stand together. And then it's a rational, reasonable, justified with evidence argument. It's not just a bunch of wackadoodles screaming, yelling.
Okay. Now I'm going to go back and pull you back here just a little bit.
Sure.
Because we went to your presentation this morning and saw you doing modeling, and we also heard that the county clerk is, not the county clerk, our election people, Bobby Groves, they are unaware that is going on because they're very diligent, and Bobby Groves is one of our favorite people.
She's doing her job. Keep going, sorry.
She's doing her job,
Yeah.
and so what many people would say, oh, you're an election denier. You're already out because you deny that the elections are fair and free,
Right.
and that there's anything that we're not aware of, especially in Mesa County where we pride ourselves on doing such a great job. So how does the election malfeasance happen?
Great question. So when I ask people what's wrong with our elections, they usually have their own opinion. And in Mesa County, you might say, we don't have a problem. We like our clerk. Everything's good. Now, when I go to these small red counties and I show up, they're saying, what are you doing, Dr. Frank? We don't need you here. Everything's good here. We've got a great clerk. We've got a great sheriff. We have great commissioners. We don't need you here. Everything's good. They think everything's good. And then I say, well, let's just have a look. And I bring out their own voter rolls for their own county. And I show them what's really happening in their rolls, and their jaws fall open. They don't realize what's been happening. Now, that doesn't mean that their clerk is an evil person or a stupid person, or
Right.
what it means is the system that's being used that the clerks must comply with is shielding them from something that's happening. So let me just explain that. Every county in the state, nobody has their own voter rolls. Let's say your clerk wants to put somebody in the voter rolls. What does she do? Does she bring out her book and say, oh, I'm going to add Ruth today. I'm going to add Lisa today. No, she logs into the state system and adds Ruth or Lisa to the state system. Oh, I want to delete somebody because Lisa's moved away. I log into the state system. So in other words, the rolls don't exist in Mesa County.
We don't have our own.
They exist somewhere else. And in your case, in Colorado, they may exist in your own state because your Dominion is based here. Dominion is based here, and they maintain a lot of that for you. So it's possible. I don't know for a fact, but it's probably here. Like when I'm in other states, like when I'm in Alabama, there are clerks that are frustrated because for them to work on their voter rolls, they have to log into a computer in Nebraska because that's where ES&S is. They're an ES&S state and not a Dominion state. And so their voter rolls aren't even in their own state. Well, in other words, this is not just Colorado. This is every state in America. The voter rolls are centrally controlled. Clerks don't maintain their own rolls. So
And this is new.
it's...
I mean, since 2000 something.
2010, 2012. And I showed you the graphs
Yes,
today.
uh-huh.
And you could see that. You could see when that happened in the data.
Right.
And I
2008.
exactly.
Yeah.
I showed you guys exactly. And yesterday I met with your state senators. One of your state senators, I don't remember her name right.
Janice Rich.
Janice. She was a great lady. She's a former clerk. And I sat and had a long meeting with her. And I showed her that graph. And she says, yeah, see there? That's when the rolls were clean. That's when the clerks were in charge of the rolls. Once the clerks lost being in charge of the rolls, suddenly they all got super inflated and super dirty quickly. Because then what happens is the clerks aren't in charge anymore. The local clerk knows whether Lisa's around or not anymore, whether she moved away. But who knows in Denver? Who knows somewhere else whether who's in the rolls?
Nor do they care.
Right. And so first of all, they don't have local knowledge. Second of all, this other thing that started happening at that point is the state automatically adds people to the voter rolls. Anybody who touches any government organization. You get a driver's license, you renew your driver's license. You go to jail, you get food stamps. Any government agency you touch automatically is putting people in the voter rolls. And so what that's done is it's created this massive surge in your voter rolls once the state is automatically doing that. And a lot of those people don't belong in your voter rolls. Okay, and then also at the same time, they've put in place procedures for cleaning that are way lax. So for example, you heard today when we were in our meeting this morning that in the clerk's office, if somebody moves away, you can't take them out of the voter rolls. They have to miss 2 federal elections, then be made inactive, then later, if they don't themselves come in and turn themselves in and say, I don't live here anymore and fill out a form, then your state carries them along. So you're adding people aggressively, but you're not cleaning up in a commensurate way. So your voter rolls are becoming very bloated, very full of non-real voters.
And you were saying some of those voters could be, your 16-year-old gets a driver's license and they automatically get added to the voter rolls even though they can't vote yet.
Right. Now, what I showed you today was not the 16-year-olds. I was only showing you who is available to vote, eligible to vote.
Okay.
But still, the principle is valid. Let's say that Johnny turns 16 and gets a driver's license and he gets put in kind of like the holding point. Now, when he turns 18, he'll be automatically put in the rolls as an active voter, but he might have just gone off to college. Now he's in your roll. So guess what's going to happen? A ballot's going to show up for Johnny at your house,
Right.
even though he's now off at college. Well, that's what's happening is ballots are going all over the place to people that shouldn't be getting ballots. So I was just in another county yesterday. Where was it? 2 days ago, Rio Grande, and I was sitting with the commissioner, and no, it was Delta County, and there are 8 people registered at his house. 4 of them still live there, and 6 ballots are showing up, and the 2 extra ballots are for his children who moved away over a decade ago. Why are they still in the rolls, and why are they still receiving ballots? And the commissioner told me, I've gone and told the clerk multiple times, they don't live here anymore. They're still in the rolls. So that's a problem. First of all, you're mailing ballots that are really not supposed to be sent out. So it's creating opportunity for fraud to happen. And the second thing is you're spending about $10 a piece for those. So multiply that across your county. In Mesa County, if a third of the people in your rolls don't belong there, and your rolls have something like, what is about 115, 120,000
I think she said 119,500.
Yeah, let's make the math easy. Let's say it's 120,000 people in your voter rolls, and Doug Frank has studied that, which I have, and about a third of them don't belong there. That's 40,000. That's a third of 120. 40,000 times $10 a piece. Every election, you're wasting $400,000. That's a lot, and that's just in the mailing cost. That doesn't include all the other stuff. So that seems to me that's a pretty bad situation. Now, if you go to your clerk and say, we don't want to do that anymore, she'll say, oh, but the state law says we have to do that. And so then that's where I come in. Let's get a bunch of counties to get together and say, that's an unfunded mandate, which, by the way, that movement is being led in your state right out of Mesa County.
It is.
That's an unfunded mandate, and it opens us up to fraud to boot. Why would we do that? And the state says, you have to do it, you have to do it. And so then what we want to do is we want to get a bunch of counties to stand together and say, no, we don't have to do it. And there are 2 reasons we don't have to do it. 1, it's an unfunded mandate. 2, it exposes us, our elections, to election fraud. And by the way, here's a bunch of examples of election fraud that have happened to us because of this system. And we don't have to comply with any law or policy which violates our constitutional rights. Every one of these fraudulent ballots is nullifying one of our ballots, nullifying our constitutional rights. So guess what? We're going to tell the state, no.
And by fraudulent ballots, all you mean there is that it was delivered and it shouldn't have been.
No. By fraudulent ballot, a ballot was turned in using somebody's name, and it wasn't them. A fraudulent ballot is somebody's dead for 10 years, but somebody is still turning in a ballot for them. A fraudulent ballot is when John Smith moved to Texas, and he's voting in Texas, but somebody's still voting for John Smith here.
Okay.
Those are fraudulent ballots.
Okay.
And what I do is I bring you tools to help you find that. So all the claims we make are fully backed with evidence. We don't go public with any information. In my 7 steps that I teach people, step 6 is a peer review process. You gather your evidence, you've got it in a binder. Now we're going to beat you up. We're going to tear that data apart. Nothing's going to go public that isn't real fraud. Because if you say it's fraud and it isn't, it just decreases the credibility of everybody.
Right.
Yes.
That is an issue.
It's a huge, it's not just an issue here, it's an issue everywhere. Everybody got excited after 2020. Oh, we're finding fraud. I've looked at a lot of that. It's not fraud. And people say it's fraud. It's not fraud. There's an organization known as United Sovereign Americans. And they've been going around the country saying the voter rolls are full of fraud because they define fraud as a mistake in the voter rolls, like a misspelling of your name. They call that fraud. That's not fraud. That's a mistake in the voter rolls.
Right.
But they're going around saying it's fraud, and I think that makes all of us look like wackadoodles. We don't want to say it's fraud unless it really is fraud. And so and that's what I'm here for. I'm here to teach you how to do that. And then I want to organize the counties to stand together and say to the state, we're just not going to comply with this. This is irrational. What? You're going to force us to send a ballot to somebody we know is dead? You're going to force us to send a ballot to somebody who lives in another state and here's the record that he voted? No, we're not going to follow your rules. We're going to make our own rules locally. We're actually going to comply with federal law, by the way, because federal law allows us to do this. So there's like a little gray area in there, a little wiggle room. But I don't want people to. I'm not encouraging anybody to break any laws. Absolutely not. We are going to follow the law. We're just going to do a better job following the law than the state system is, if that makes sense.
So the state system, you talked about churning. I think people should know what churning is
Yeah.
and how that works in terms of making elections questionable, and the NGOs. I thought that was
The
fascinating.
NGOs is a biggie.
Okay, so talk about churn first. Let me define what churning is. So let's say you have a county with 100 people in it, and 10 people move out, and 10 people move in. So your voter rolls dropped by 10, and then your voter rolls grew by 10. There were 20 changes out of 100, so we call that a 20% churn. 20 of the names changed. Got it?
Yep.
So the churn is 20%. That's the way we define churn. So if I were to go to a typical county clerk and say, how many names did you add to the rolls? How many names did you remove? They'll give me a number, and some certain number of per week they do. And if you look at it over the course of a year, they might have several, and it depends on the size of the county, obviously. They'll have a certain number that they've churned. And then I show, well, wait a minute, I have a copy of your voter rolls here from the state. I have a copy of your voter rolls here from the state. And you only made this little amount of changes, but look how much the state changed. The state, it will have changed 10 times, 20 times as much as that. And the clerk doesn't even know because the total number in the rolls isn't shooting up. People are being added and removed by the state. So it kind of stays steady, but the churn is massive. So in Mesa, in the last 4 years, your churn is about 80%. Now, what does that mean? That means that if you have 100 people in your rolls, there have been 80 changes of names in your rolls in the last 4 years. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Now, that doesn't mean that 80 of them were taken out and 80 of them were replaced, because I also showed you the statistics. About 80% of the people who were in your rolls are still in your rolls.
Exactly.
So what's happening, it's that top 20% that's churn, and it's churned 4 times. And that's a lot of people adding and removing to the rolls. And typically when I talk to a sheriff or a county clerk, they'll say, our population isn't churning like that, Dr. Frank.
Right.
I say, I agree. Your population didn't churn 80%, but your rolls did. And they're like, wait a minute, that's not me doing it. At first, the clerks think they're in charge of their rolls. But since I have copies, snapshots of each of the rolls, I can give them the list of the names who were added and the list of the names who were deleted. And when I show it to them, they're like, I had no idea this was happening. So this is
So
what...
I guess, how does that happen at the state level?
So the state itself runs algorithms, but also the state gives your voter rolls to an outside organization known as ERIC, E-R-I-C, the Election Registration Information Center. And until last year, there were about 32 states around the country that were doing this. And what they do is they give your voter rolls, they give your driver's license information, they give your social security information, they give everything to this outside agency, non-government organization, and you pay them. And the goal was compare a state to state and find out, we got John Smith registered here, but he's also registered in Texas and he's voting in Texas. So you know what? We should take him out here. The intent of ERIC was to give you the ability to compare state to state and clean up. But what's happened, all the ERIC states, they're the ones with the dirtiest voter rolls. So it wasn't accomplishing that. It turned into ERIC saying, oh, by the way, did you know you have 100 new people that moved into that precinct over there and they're not in the rolls? Maybe you ought to get them registered. So it turned, and those people now get registered and they didn't even know they're registered. They're not even planning to vote. They don't even know. They're not the kind of people who want to vote or whatever. So that's part of the reason why the rolls are churning so much. It's not the local clerk doing it. It's at the state level, and it's not what's her name again, Jen? Griswold. It's not Griswold going, I'm adding somebody, I'm removing somebody. She's marketed that, she's jobbed that out to an outside company
source.
that's doing that. Now, a lot of the states are really disappointed with that because it's been so bad. So last year, 12 states got out of ERIC.
I was reading that. And
Yes.
that a lot of it's because it's disappointing to their public because there are names, social security numbers, addresses, everything to an outside source entirely rather than keeping it local.
All your personal information's been given into a non-government organization, one that you can't FORA, or I guess you call it CORA here.
Cora?
Yeah, Cora.
You can't CORA them because they're not a government agency.
Right.
And so you've given away all your private information to somebody, and
And we should be screaming about that.
you should be on multiple levels. Not only are you giving away all the personal information, but who's using it and for what?
Right.
And if somebody wanted to cheat your election, you've given away everything necessary to do so, including the signatures. And so then people say, well, we use signature verification, Dr. Frank, to verify those ballots when they come back. You've given away all the signatures to people that want to cheat. So that's not a very good idea.
So it's just a bad system.
It's a bad, thank you, that, and
Yeah.
all the words I just said, you said it the best. It's a bad system. So therefore, we need to get all these counties to say, it's a bad system, and so we're not going to use it. And we're going to save money, and our elections are going to be safer and cleaner. We're running them local.
And the way we're going to do it is to prove it to you. So you keep talking about dirty voters, dirty vote. Explain
Voter
what
rolls.
I know that you have, but explain it what a dirty voter roll looks like or what it is.
So you can look through history, and I showed a graph today of that, and you can see that a clean voter rolls would be where everybody who's in the rolls should be there. They're a resident, they're a citizen, they're they're not a felon, so they should be in the rolls. That would be a perfectly clean voter rolls. Now, nobody expects a voter rolls to be perfectly clean because you move out today and go to Texas, well, you're still in the rolls. Well, technically the rolls is dirty, but you got to give them a little time to clean up.
Okay.
So there's no perfectly clean voter rolls. There's always a little bit of slop, which is normal. That's a normal thing. Now, so therefore, and I can tell you because I've studied the whole country for 100 years on the voter rolls, a clean voter rolls is around 60 to 70% of the voting age people. So that would be a clean voter rolls. So when I was telling you about the senator I met with yesterday, you could see the history if you have the voting age population and you can see the history of your voter rolls, it was tracking really nicely, about 70% for decades. Got nice clean voter rolls. And then it started getting dirty. And then you could see a correction. You could see statewide, your clerks all got together and said, let's clean up our voter rolls. And then it got dirty again. And then you could see the clerks clean it up. And interestingly, that senator I was talking to yesterday, she actually served during that time when the rolls were really clean. She says, oh yeah, we were on it. We were really cleaning our voter rolls. And so it looks really good. Then suddenly in 2010, whoosh, your voter rolls shot up, and they've been climbing ever since, and many counties now have more people in the voter rolls than they have people. That can't be real. You know your voter rolls are dirty. So when I say dirty, I'm saying that your voter rolls may be 2 out of 3 people in your rolls should be there. They're good voters that you should mail a ballot to them if you're going to mail a ballot. And then this upper third is churning. And they're not here anymore, they've moved away, and it's constantly churning it, yet you're still mailing ballots to it. So that's what I mean by dirty voter rolls. And, I'm not trying to stop anybody from voting. Everybody should vote. I want everybody to vote.
That's eligible.
Yeah, that's eligible. But when you're mailing ballots, when you're just papering the sidewalk, when you're littering the sidewalk with ballots, you're just opening yourself up to all kinds of fraud. So what I do is I help people find, and I was showing you today in that spreadsheet I was showing you, I give people tools to help them find which one of those ballots shouldn't be returned that did get returned and did get voted. Oh, gee, that guy's been dead for 10 years. How come we have 3 more ballots with him since? That's a problem. That guy moved to Texas 3 years ago and he's voting in Texas, but yet somebody's still using that ballot today. So I help find those fraudulent ballots. And people think it's a small amount, but it isn't. It's a lot. And that's where the NGOs come in, and that's what you were just asking about next. Do you want me to jump into that?
Sure.
I could talk a lot in case you haven't figured that out. But what's happened is if you look at a lot of these non-government organizations, they're socially based organizations. Rock the Vote, Antifa, Catholic Relief Services, Lutheran Relief Services, all these different NGOs, non-government organizations. They write grants. That's how they live. That's how they survive. And they write grants to the state. They write grants to the feds. They write grants to your city and your county. And they say, we recognize that there's a need in this community over here. This is a minority community, let's pretend, I'll just make up a situation. And a lot of them aren't even registered to vote. And we think they need to re-engage society. So if you'll fund our grant, we'll send a team into that community and we'll get them registered and we'll baby step them through and make sure that they order a ballot and make sure that they turn their ballot in. And so that's the messaging. And I think that all sounds great. I don't have anything against encouraging people to vote. Except a lot of the people in that minority neighborhood don't belong in your rolls. A lot of them aren't citizens. A lot of them aren't there anymore. And what happens is the NGO is on the hook to deliver a certain number of ballots. We're going to deliver 100 ballots, pretend. So they go into these communities and they end up maybe bending the rules a little bit here. And we proved that was happening in Pennsylvania. And I think I told you that story this morning. And there's a lot of that. So I'm not having anything against minority people or anything. I'll just use that as one example. I was up in Maine recently. It wasn't minority at all. It was a bunch of Canadians. Bunch of Canadians in there who were all in the voter rolls because they were living in Maine. Right. And they had driver's licenses, but they're not eligible to vote. But they were all voting. That's not fraudulent, that's illegal.
That's illegal.
And so there.
Do you find this more like in college towns, like Grand Junction is a college town, and that I know that they came in and did a big sweep of Mesa College.
The NGOs did.
Yes.
I don't know that personally. You know that personally. I can tell you a story I know for sure. When I was in Los Angeles a couple years ago, I spoke to a group of 100 Republican women. And one of the moms stood up at the end. She said, Dr. Frank, the NGOs came on campus this week and offered my son $200 for his ballot. And when the word got out, all the kids were running back to their dorm rooms ordering ballots for all of their roommates and dorm mates. And then they were all bringing them out. And the NGOs were giving them $200 cash right on the spot and collecting ballots.
So not signatured ballots or anything, just the ballot itself.
With the envelope.
Okay.
And then the NGOs were, buying those. So obviously they weren't going to do nothing with them. You're paying $100 a piece. You're going to do something with those. And what's happening, let me go back to the minority neighborhood for a minute. And especially in Colorado, you have a lot of immigrants from south of the border. Okay. They get put in the when they get a driver's license, they get put into the rolls. And I grew up on an Angus ranch in Northern California, and I grew up with a lot of Mexicans, a lot of people who are up in my agricultural area working. In fact, there were more non-citizens at my mother's funeral than there were gringos. Okay? So that's the kind of farming community I grew up in. And so I have nothing against those people. In fact, they know better. They don't vote because they know they're not allowed to.
Right.
But what you find is some of these NGOs go into those communities and say, hey, Enrique, did you get a ballot in the mail? Oh, yeah, I did, but I'm not going to vote because I'm not allowed. And he says, well, I'll give you $20 for it. And so somebody will go through the neighborhoods and buy up all those ballots. Now, the thing is, Enrique doesn't understand that when he gave you his ballot, his name is going to be used in the rolls. He's going to be recorded as having voted. So later, when we come knock on Enrique's door and say, hey, you voted, you're not allowed, he's going to go, no, I didn't vote. He doesn't understand that he just got put in a very uncomfortable position. And when you show that to our Mexican friends, they panic because they realize, I can't become a citizen. I've committed a felony. I'm not allowed to do this. And so they're afraid. So a lot of times I encourage my teams when they discover this to sign affidavits. Enrique swears he didn't vote, and I'll sign off on this. And if anything ever comes up, we know this happened in the neighborhood. So it's like there's somebody who can acknowledge, no, these people didn't break the law. And so I kind of like that as a hand of friendship to those people.
Right.
They didn't do this. Somebody did it to them.
them.
Yes. So anyway, so that's where another way the NGOs get mixed up in this mess. Now, I think the Canadians up in Maine, they just voted because they wanted to vote. I don't think anybody gave them any money, and they weren't supposed to, but they said, I'm voting anyway, you know.
Give me a ballot, I'll use it.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter if it's illegal or not. So in the case of the Canadians up there in Maine when I was there, that's illegal. That's not fraud. In the case of the minority neighborhood, which is why I brought it up, that's fraud. Because you're using somebody's name, somebody's ballot. It's not them voting. If they had voted themselves, that would just be illegal.
Right.
But the fact that you gathered those other and then used them, that's fraud. So there's a distinction. So I have people collect the evidence, and I have them organize it into a binder. This is under this tab we have a bunch of fraud cases. Under this tab we have a bunch of illegal cases. Under here I have a bunch of dirty voter roll examples. And then here we have a bunch of places where the state is breaking the law or the county is breaking the law. And I'm not saying that to pick on the clerks or the Mesa County people. Today, Terry was there, and she's obviously quite meticulous
Yes, she is.
Yes.
about what they do. I have nothing against them. In fact, I always assure the clerks, you're not the target. The state system is the target. We want you in charge of our elections. So let's have these counties all stand together and say, you know what, the state's really mucked this up. Let's take it back locally where we can have clean, we can save money, and we have safe elections. That's what I'm organizing in your state, if that makes sense.
That does.
It does. So anyway,
Perfect.
the binder, the fourth category with the illegal stuff, that's what got me on that topic, was the systems are, there's a problem in your state. Your legislature has said, whatever the Secretary of State says, that's the law. The problem is, what the Secretary of State has said, some of it violates federal law. Some of it enables fraud in your counties. So as communities, you don't have to comply with any law or policy that violates your constitutional rights. So you can comply with HAVA, Help America Vote Act 2002. You can comply with NVRA, National Voter Registration Act 1993. And you can do a better job with your election than these policies. You follow me?
Right.
So I'm not telling you not to follow the law, you're not just
Break the law.
You're not just breaking the law. You're not just saying we're going to break the law. No. You're saying we're going to comply with the law better than the policies that are being dictated to us. And in the process, we're going to make our elections safer and save money. What's wrong with that? But if you do that one county at a time, Griswold's going to come down on you like a load of bricks. So you got to get a bunch of counties to stand together, and that sort of forces it into the public dialogue, forces it into the legislative dialogue, and then maybe it can be addressed. But I'm not waiting for the legislature to fix it.
So we need to have our sheriffs on board,
Yep.
our commissioners on board,
Yes.
and then our, I just lost it.
I don't think you need the clerk on board as much as you need the commissioners and the sheriff. The reason is because really the commissioners are the one who write the check that pays the clerk, right? The commissioners are the one who manage the budget. And our but most counties, the commissioners have delegated the election to the clerk, and then she just follows the laws or the rules that Griswold does. But in the end, the commissioners are the ones with the political power, but the sheriff is the one with the constitutional duty. You know, most people don't know this, and I only learned it 6 years ago, that, let's say you're a policeman. A policeman swears an oath to enforce the laws of the state, enforce the laws of the city. They answer to the mayor. The mayor says, go arrest that person. The policeman says, okay. But the sheriff swears an oath to defend the constitutional rights of his citizens. The sheriff can arrest the mayor. The sheriff is the highest constitutional officer in the county. If the president of the United States comes into Mesa County, your sheriff can arrest him. Okay, it's a very powerful office. The only person higher than the sheriff is the coroner. And most people don't even know that. In a lot of these small red counties I go to, the coroner and the sheriff are the same guy.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of power in that role. But why is that important? Let's say that your governor says, we're going to take away all your guns. Well, the sheriff can say, not in my county, you're not. The sheriff is the constitutional barrier to protect the constitutional rights, and they call that interposition. The sheriff interposes between the tyranny of government and the rights of the citizens. Well, in this situation, if we can show that your elections are disenfranchising you from your constitutional rights, which every fraudulent ballot does.
Because it negates your ballot.
Exactly. So you just lost your state constitutional rights right there. The sheriff can step in and say, you know what? I've seen the evidence. The county commissioners have agreed we're going to save the money and have a better system. I'm going to interpose between the state saying you must and what my county has decided they're going to do, which is justified to defend their constitutional rights. And then, wouldn't it be lovely, and it will be lovely, when multiple sheriffs link elbows and say, we're defending our citizens, and the county commissioners are doing the same. And the beautiful thing, I'm so glad to be here right now in Colorado, is it's led right here in Mesa County. You guys have been organizing the counties already to say we're not going to comply with unfunded mandates.
Right.
So your counties are already self-organizing to tell the state to pound sand, which is perfect. I was just in Rio Grande County, and the other day, one of the commissioners stood up in my presentation, and he said, by the way, Dr. Frank, we didn't want to use this voting system that was being imposed upon us, so we told the state we're going to get rid of it because we can't afford it. It's too expensive. And the state says, no, you have to do it. And he says, it's going to cost us $80,000. $80,000 we don't have as a county. It's an unfunded mandate. So see, these two issues go beautifully together. Rio Grande can say, not only are we not going to buy your stupid machine that we don't need. We're a tiny little county. We don't need fancy machines. We can do it by hand ourselves and save the money. But not only are we not going to comply with that, we're also not going to pay this and all these other unfunded mandates. So see, I think these issues go together magnificently, and the timing is perfect for you to make a stand as a county, because it's not just the elections. It's about the state telling you what to do in your county. And by the way, Mesa's beautiful. You shouldn't let the state mess it up. You can do a better job running your own county
I think so, yes.
than they can do. I think so.
So what percentage do you need to show for a commissioner or a sheriff to be willing to say that's sufficient evidence
Wow.
to warrant what you want to do?
What a fabulous question. So in the early days, I wrote this thing, 7 Steps for Taking Back
And
Our
we
Elections.
want to know what those say, but
Yeah, no. In the early days, I was telling everybody, you want to get 100 cases of fraud. And the reason I said that is because if you just found one case of fraud, that's just grandma voting for grandpa. Okay?
Right.
And you're never going to get rid of that kind of fraud. That's going to happen. If you only got 10, well, that's a few grandmas and a few college students and a few parents that voted for their kid, and, it's not a serious problem. But if you could get 100, and I've often sat with clerks and said, how many cases of fraud do you need? Which is your question. How many cases of fraud do you need before you're going to say enough is enough? We have to fix this. And so a lot of times they'll say, well, a couple hundred would probably be. And so a couple hundred cases of fraud are okay with you? And they're like, no.
that's not what I'm saying.
No, I'm not saying.
Wait.
And well, but how about 100? That's a good compromise. And so we were in the early days. We were looking for 100 cases, and we've been doing this around the country. And we can. Mesa County. I bet you we could find 100 cases in a weekend. But what I've learned is it's a mistake to go forward with 100 cases. I've learned that if you go to the county or your clerk and you say, here's 100 cases of fraud, it overwhelms them. It's smarter to say, here are 10 fully documented cases of fraud. 3 of these are people who've been dead for 10 years and still voting in the elections. 3 of them are people that live in another state. These are ghost voters. Somebody's casting their ballots. 3 of them are people voting in 2 states at once. And, you have a variety. See, there's
Things.
Exactly. And then you just show 10 maybe it is 100 in Mesa, but you should pretend it's just 10 in Mesa. And then Rio Grande stands up and says, and guess what? We have 3 dead, and we have 10. And Saguache stands up and says, and we have 10. And Delta stands up and says, we have 10. And they're all the same kinds of fraud everywhere. Then it's not the number that we're really emphasizing. We're emphasizing the fact that the same problem is everywhere.
Everywhere.
Gee, this isn't a Mesa County problem. This isn't a Saguache problem. This isn't a Rio Grande problem. This is a state problem, which is why the counties are saying we're not going to use the state system anymore. See the difference?
Right.
Now, if Mesa County people, you come together you go to your commissioners and say, here are 10 cases, and if they say 10 cases, that's nothing. Get out of here. We don't care. Then you can say, well, if 10 cases don't matter to you, then you and 9 other county officials have to give up your ballots in the next election, because that's what you're asking us to do. Every one of these fraudulent ballots is nullifying one of ours. And by the way, here's a binder where we've got another 50 ready to go, and we've probably got another 100 in another weekend if you want. We can bring you all the fraud. We just brought you 10 examples. So what I've learned is instead of trying to collect this massive amount and bury them, it doesn't seem to work. The better strategy is to just give them 10 clear cases in multiple counties. If they want more, we can give them more. But in the end, it's the fact that it's a systemic problem that we're trying to point out. Many local elections are decided by under 100 ballots.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
especially school board races, and they're low turnouts in those city elections, and so the low turnout. And if you think about it, here, let's put it to you this way: little numbers, forgive the numbers. Let's say you have 100 people in Mesa County, and let's say 30 of them don't belong in the rolls.
Mm-hmm.
So you sent 70 ballots out to real people, and 30 ballots, who knows where? Okay, but it's a city election, and the turnout's really low. So let's say instead of getting 100% returned of those 70 ballots, let's say only 30 come back. Okay, now the election is, out of 30, it might be 17 to 13.
Right.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
except that there are 30 ballots floating around who knows where. All you got to do is find 4 of those, and
And you've got it. Yep.
so the local school board elections are very vulnerable to this. The local city council, the local mayor, the sheriffs, those elections are very vulnerable elections with this system. So that's kind of, when you say 10 votes don't matter, a small percentage matters, especially in the local elections. Yes. Everybody likes to think, well, it's Trump versus Kamala. Yeah, everybody thinks of the top of the ticket. I don't. I think the most important election there is in the whole country is your school board. I think that there's probably nothing more important than that.
It's true. Watch your kids.
And
Our future voters.
And that's the next generation, exactly. And if they're shaping our country's future. So, and during COVID, didn't we learn that?
Yes, we did.
That the school board is probably maybe one of the most powerful things.
Absolutely.
And so we used to just kind of ho-hum. But no, that's very important. And yet the turnout's so low, and it's easy to cheat that election. So that's a vulnerable election.
Interesting.
Okay, well, give us, do you think we need any more before we do the 7 steps, or
I
do you want to do the 7 steps?
I'm happy to do that. I think what I've learned as I travel the country, like for example, I already mentioned one misconception. I show up in these small red counties and they think everything's okay. But they have the exact same problem that you have in Mesa County, in your bigger county. They don't realize have it. So the first kind of waking people, red pilling people, waking them up, is to realize the problem with our election isn't you. It's the state system is the problem. So you need to divorce her. So that's the first thing. The next thing is people say, well, gee, Dr. Frank, we checked the election. We know everything's okay. And they always say, well, gee, your clerk will say, we did a recount. We did a risk limiting audit. We did a logic and accuracy test. Everything's working great. And I always tell people, it doesn't matter how many times you count the cash in the register. What matters is how many of the bills are counterfeit. And it's the same way in these elections. It doesn't matter if the machines are counting the same ballots. You can do recounts. The problem is every one of those ballots really from who you think it's from. Is every one of those ballots a legitimate ballot? So everybody wants to audit the elections. I'm not the counting. I'm not against that. We should audit every aspect of an election. But then when they do the recount and it comes out the same, everybody says, well, see, there's no fraud. No, you're missing the point. We need to audit the voters. That's where the real problem is. And that's why the churn is so important. Where your vote, because you're constantly generating all these new people in your rolls that aren't really going to be around or are not supposed to be in the rolls. Right. And you're mailing ballots to them. So it kind of generates this constant credit line of problem ballots that can get into your election. So the first kind of break people out of their misconception is that they think that because they're small and red and they've got great leaders that everything's okay. The next thing is that recounting the ballots doesn't fix the problem. Really, the problem is they need to control every aspect of their election locally, because then they can make sure everything's good. So then they're like, well, gee, how can we do that, Dr. Frank?
That sounds like a lot of work, Dr. Frank.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like to me.
And so that's where the 7 steps come in. And, you know, my first year of working on elections, and I was here in Colorado back in 2021. Yes. In those days, we thought that the way to fix this was to go to the legislature and to go to the secretaries of states, and we thought everything was top down. We just want the silver bullet. Let's have that lawsuit that fixes everything. You know, we were kind of thinking that way. Yes. It took us a year to wake up, and it took me a year. Maybe you're faster than me. It took me a year to learn. No, that ain't gonna work. And then starting 22, I started working grassroots. And by the time I was in 2023, I had refined a strategy that was working, and it's been working around the country. We've had a lot of success. I can describe some of those. But I collected it into a little brochure called 7 Steps Taking Back Our Elections, because the John Birch Society asked me to. They said, Dr. Frank, everything we do at John Birch Society is in a trifold. Would you describe your work in a trifold? And so, okay. So I took on the challenge, right? Can I do this? And I had a lot of trouble. I had difficulty coming up describing what I do because it's so varied everywhere. So then I thought, well, let me take a different approach. Where are all the groups failing and why? Yeah. And I wrote up a list of all, and then I said, okay, what's common about that? Oh, they had too many people in their startup team. Oh, so that means we need a small team. Okay, we're missing this leadership. We're missing a data person. We're missing a promoter. We're missing a recruiter. And so then I took the opposite of that and organized that. And so step 1 is get connected. That way you don't repeat everybody else's mistakes. Step 2 is you get organized. And there are 7 people on that team. And you need to have each of these skills. Think about it like a war. If you're going to wage war, you don't just need generals.
No.
You need a general, you need infrastructure, you need training, you need soldiers, you need intel, you need archivists, there are all kinds of things that you have to have.
In order to make it work.
Exactly. And so guess what? You need that. And I love it that I'm talking to ladies, especially since you're involved, ladies. I wrote this late 2022, early 2023, and a year later I was visiting a team of gals that were on a team. They put one helping them with their election, and they said, well, Dr. Frank, we're really behind on the election stuff because we took time out to work on the pornography in our schools. And they had succeeded. They had cleaned up their schools. And I'm like, wow, how did you do that? How did you succeed? And because I want to learn those techniques. Let's use those techniques. And they said, we use the 7 steps. And it suddenly dawned on me, the reason the 7 steps work is because it's the people becoming the government again. And I didn't realize that. I wrote an empirical document. What doesn't work? What does work? What does work is we the people being we the people again. And I hadn't realized that. So really the 7 steps, get connected, get organized. You're basically organizing a local team. You make a plan based upon your local situation. You implement this plan. And then step 5, you build a movement in your community. The people have the power. They just need to know. And so you build a movement in your community. Before you go public, though, you review your data to make sure that you don't make stupid mistakes. And then that results in local empowerment because now the people have a voice again. President Trump just sent a tweet out a couple months ago. And he didn't say, I'm going to sign an executive order getting rid of mail-in ballots. I'm going to sign an executive order requiring single-day elections. He didn't say that. He said, I'm going to lead a movement. Because he knows like we know, especially you ladies probably already know, I'm probably preaching to the choir here, that the way to fix a community is not from the top down. It's from the bottom up. And that's what this is. Only I'm not sure I was so wise when I wrote it 3 years ago, because it was mostly empirical. I was just looking what works, let's organize what works. And it turns out being the government. So that's what I'm doing in Colorado right now. I've been organizing a bunch of small counties, helping them realize you have the power if you'll just form your little movement.
And use it. Yes.
So,
Yes.
This is Debbie Downer always. That's my job. So you're organizing a movement, and but there are so many movements at the same time. Like you were talking about, they had to take out for the pornography. How do you get people organized in a way that they feel like several different things are happening? Like we have school board elections going on right now.
I know.
Yes.
And then which are really important to us.
Very important.
And then you have this going on, which needs to have people working on too.
Yeah.
How do you get people to say that we're not going to attack everything at once?
Right.
How do you divide and conquer, I guess, is the question.
What a great question. So let me give an extreme. Let's say you lose every one of the school board races, all the people you supported. Now you're going to say to yourself, wow, I put in all that energy, I put in all that money and all that time. Nothing. I got nothing out of it. I call that a hamster wheel. A lot of energy, no progress.
Okay.
If your election is free and fair and you legitimately lose, you just say to yourself, I'm going to work harder next time.
Better luck next time, right?
And that's good. But if you can show that there's problems in the election and you lost, now, wait a minute here. We did all that work and the other side cheated. So now I'm going to say to you, oh, you're just going to do that again? Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I know that your issue is important. Your school board is very important. Your pornography in the school is very important. LGBT things, these are very important. I understand all those things are important. But guess what? They're all downstream from your elections. And if you don't have clean elections, the rest you're going to lose eventually. So what I always try to tell people is, look, I understand you care and it's important, but when you lose, come and talk to me. Come and talk to me, and let's get you organized on elections. The way General Flynn puts it, he says the pain level has to get high enough.
Exactly. I've got a friend that says that all the time.
If you're in
Nothing happens unless you're in pain.
Right. And so if you're in a small red county and you're winning all your school board races, then there's no pain. But when you're in those kind of purplish counties and a little bit of cheating goes a long way, then that's where I can have a lot of success quickly.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So how do I get in those little purplish counties? I have a lot of people that want their help because they know there's a little bit of cheating and it makes the difference. In the small red counties, they want to get involved because they see that the state is imposing a system on them and their constitutional voice is being lost statewide as well.
Yes, that's true.
And so those are the sorts of avenues that I use to try to bring people to this issue. I'm not saying it's the only issue, but it's sort of like if you think of the story in the Bible of David and Goliath. Little David shows up to visit his three brothers and bring back news to his father and brings them lunch, right? And he shows up and Goliath is standing out in the field and Goliath is insulting their God and insulting their nation. And so David goes over to his brothers and says, hey, what gives? Get out there and take care of business. And what did their brothers said to him, hey you, who are you? You're a shepherd. Go back to the sheep, right? He didn't listen. He went out. He stood in front of Goliath and said, the battle's the Lord's. And he threw the stone, takes Goliath down, cuts his head off. Then the Bible says, the children of Israel rose up and chased the Philistines out of the land. That's what the Bible says. So when you look back at that story, you realize the problem wasn't Goliath. The problem was the children of Israel were hiding in the hills.
Right.
It took one boy to stand and say,
This isn't right.
we're going to fix this. So another thing of getting people involved is, especially in Colorado, I understand because your government's been very tyrannical in this respect. They come down hard on you. You cross any lines, man, they're hard on you. So you're kind of beaten down a little bit. You're beaten into submission. I think you're hiding in the hills. So I think the right way to build this movement is just to get a couple of people to start standing. Let's get a few Davids.
A few Davids out there.
A few Davids out there. And then once this Davids are standing, I think other people say, hey, he's still standing. Let's join in. So, and then you can chase the Philistines out of the land. I think that's kind of a more general answer, but I really think that's where you are as a state. I have a feeling for that because I've been traveling the whole country for a while. In some states that come in, man, you can just feel the oppression. Oh, it's amazing. You're not the worst. Maybe the bottom 10%, let's say.
Yeah.
But
We're right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
like, I mean, you still have your guns. When I'm in New York, they're not even allowed to own a gun unless they have a permit. They can't even own a gun. And if you used to own a gun and you do now and it's illegal, they can come in your house and seize it. I mean, just think of that. They've given up their constitutional rights so many times in so many ways that now they're just all beaten into submission. Like, it's just, you're not that far yet. If the government said we're coming to collect your guns, you tell them pound sand. So when the government comes to you and says, give us your ballots,
Pound sand.
pound sand, baby. It's your constitutional voice. It's your constitutional right. Now, if they were following all the laws and everything was perfect, maybe you should comply.
Right.
But they're not. So you can tell them pound sand.
So you need to know the laws. That would be a good, important
Look
step.
at you go. Step 2, get organized. The fourth person on the team is a researcher. And I always tell them, first thing, download your own laws. Read your own laws. Most people don't even know their own laws. Absolutely.
So how long do you think a process like this should take?
Good question. So, in the early days, while we were still learning, Shasta County, Northern California, 70,000 voters there. We've now taken over that county. We have taken it away from the state. We run our own elections there. In fact, I'll just mention this in passing, but Tina Peters was going to be their new clerk. That's how much we've taken back control. But since she's not available, they put in Clint Curtis. So we are running our own elections. Now that took almost 4 years. But a lot of that was learning. We started by finding fraud. We had tons of fraud, but we assumed that the evidence would be enough. No, we had to build a movement. So we learned a lot of lessons, stumbled along, fighting the state, one county at a time. A lot of lessons in that, huh?
So now we've got a blueprint.
See? So it's way faster now.
Yes.
It's not 4 years anymore. And as I go around the country, Oregon, we're right there now. It's only been 2 years. Wisconsin, they're about to explode with their counties. I've organized those counties. Maine, we're already succeeding. Maine? I thought that was a blue state. No, Maine is not a blue state. It's a red state with a blue dot in it. All you got to do is organize all those other red counties. And Oregon the same. People think Oregon's blue. No, it's got 36 counties. 30 of them are red. 3 are purple and 3 are blue. All I got to do is organize the 30 reds. And I don't even need all 30, do I? If I had 10 or 15, that would be plenty, which I do. And the sheriffs are linking elbows and everything. So how long? It kind of depends on you guys. But if I'm honest about it, I realize, because I've been doing this every day, there's a process. And what typically happens is I think of myself as a catalyst. I come in, I feel like I've touched off a little bunch of spot fires around the state. And people are waking up and they're going, oh man, this is what Dr. Frank has said is right. We got to get organized. We got to do things. But as you pointed out, they're listening to lots of podcasts. They're listening to lots of advice from lots of different directions. And they don't necessarily implement the 7 steps so hot. Okay? And so what I've learned is they kind of get diverted. And before we know it, they're off on a tangent. I'll give you an example of a tangent. And you're going to be facing this in Mesa County. A lot of people think that they can clean the state voter rolls. And they go to great lengths. They'll canvass the neighborhoods. They'll gather all the affidavits. They'll bring them to their county officials.
I think we've been there already.
And they say, here's all the names.
Yep.
And we talked with Terry today, and they do all the work. Okay, now I would just simply ask a question empirically. What do the voters' rolls look like today? after all of that work you did.
They look worse than they did then. Ding!
Because you got the state, and I was gonna ask, that was curious to me, how do you get the state voter rolls? I mean, just,
I have 7 copies.
well, I know, how did you obtain them?
How did you obtain them?
Yes,
I'm careful about that. Half of the rolls I got from somebody in your state who doesn't mind being acknowledged. His name is James, and he has done a lot of data analysis all over the state, and he has multiple copies. And I asked him for specific ones, because I like them to be spaced about a year apart in my analysis you saw today. And he provided those, and he says, I don't mind if you tell people, but some of the other ones I'm not allowed to say where I got them.
Understood.
Only because the people that gave them to me don't want to be
Targeted.
they don't want to be targeted, like they don't want to be Tina Petered. In fact, that's the words they said. We don't want you to, and they tend to be clerks who have access, and
Right.
and party leaders who have access, and sort of things like that. So 4 of my 7 copies were from James, and the others I don't want to say.
Right.
But I have good copies, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
that's what's important, and, too, I just thought, well, can anybody get into those and see all of that? or-
There's a lot of that I can see where you couldn't or why you shouldn't
Right,
be able to. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's privacy issues, and for example, if you accept a copy of the voter rolls, you're not allowed to use it for business purposes. You're not allowed to.
well, that's a good thing.
I mean, and it makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah, right.
And so if you accept the rolls, you accept them under certain conditions. And so that's another aspect. When I'm going to give you your own copy, I'm going to give specific instructions to the people who are hosting that. No, you're not allowed to just give this to everybody. If you're going to work on a precinct, extract that precinct and instruct that precinct captain, who, by the way, is entitled to it. Precinct captains are entitled to it. Give him that and instruct them, clean that precinct or investigate that precinct. And that's perfectly legal. That's using the rolls for what they were intended.
Intended for.
You're not allowed to use that as a mailing list for your church or your mailing list for your business or whatever. You're not allowed to do that. So that's where I got.
Okay.
Did I answer the
yes,
question?
you did, yeah,
Good. Oh, you were asking how long it's going to take.
yes.
Yes.
Let me kind of finish that off.
Okay.
So today I've started off spot fires. My experience tells me I'm going to come back again in 2 months to 3 months, something like that.
Okay,
And some people are going to be, that's what got us on the voter roll thing. Some people are going to be thinking they're doing the right thing and not. And I'm going to, now didn't I tell you, stay here, and they need that guy. And I will do Zooms as well in between.
Okay.
But people are people, and it's like herding cats. The grassroots is tough. And so I'm going to kind of bring them back on track, and then I'm going to try to hit a bunch of other small counties. Like I was just in Garfield. They can't wait to get me back. And Moffat today, they came up for my presentation this morning. They want me desperately there. So, and it sounds, I don't mean to sound like this, but I've just learned I'm a really good catalyst. I'm good at this. And when I come in, I can really help you. And I use the example of Jesus of Nazareth. When Jesus went home to Nazareth, how did that work out? It was a disaster.
because you can't be a prophet in your own
It
country.
can't be a prophet in your, exactly. And so I always tell people, if Jesus Christ couldn't put all that off in his own town, what makes you think you can? Okay, you need that outside catalyst to help you.
We do indeed.
It's just human nature. And so I
Well,
don't.
we get stuck in our own little rabbit holes. We forget that there's this outside influence. Even though you have been here, you have showed us the way. The minute you leave, it start falling off.
Yes.
So we need you to keep on us continually.
Yes, and exactly, and it's just human nature.
It is.
And plus, like you have, I don't want to use names because I love these guys, but you have a couple of guys in your county who are always nagging the commissioners, and they're always nagging everybody. And if they're going to be all excited, and they're going to be, I know these guys now because I've been talking to them for the last few days, they're going to be going, Dr. Frank said this, Dr. Frank said that. You know what? They're the local schmucks. Okay? They're the prophets in their own county. It ain't going to work. This is just my experience. So how long is this going to take? I'll be back in 2-3 months. I'll do some realigning, spot off a few new fires, come back again another 2 or 3 months. By the way, I don't charge for any of this, so I'm not selling myself here. I'm telling you this is the way it typically goes. And then that third visit, the teams will have already been starting to be very successful, and things will be heating up. and they'll be working together, and that's just in time for your primary.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, see, now that's what we were looking for.
Yeah.
I think we should aim for your primary. By your primary, you should have local control of your elections in multiple counties. That's what I would say. And I'm not just saying that the counties are threatening the state. I'm saying that the counties are going to stand together and say, we're using our own rolls. We're running our own elections. We're going to follow every law. We're just not going to use these dirty rolls because we've already proven these rolls aren't real. You're forcing us to send ballots to dead people? No, we're not going to do that. We're going to save money and we're going to run a clean election, but it's going to be multiple counties together. Now, there's a second thing that's very powerful about this. Who owns the primaries? The parties.
Well, not the Republican Party in Colorado. Because it's open, so you can change your affiliation or you can vote unaffiliated.
But the primary is owned by the party. Read your own state law. Don't know your laws. And you know that's true because remember what happened last year when Griswold said she wasn't going to put Trump on the budget?
Yes.
On the ballot?
Yes.
What happened? The Republican Party said, okay then, we'll caucus.
Yeah.
See, the party owns the primary. The party decides how the primary takes place. So the party has power. So you see where I'm going? I'm bringing together multiple opportunities here. This is a nexus for you guys. Let's seize this moment. Multiple counties standing together say we're not going to pay for unfunded mandates. Multiple counties stand together says we're going to not send all these ballots where they don't belong. And by the way, it's our primary anyway. So multiple of the parties are going to stand together. I've been meeting with party leaders all over the state and say, we're going to run our own primary, and we can. See where I'm going?
Right.
That to me that's a very powerful stand to take, a very good strategy to take. And if the state says, well, you can't do that. Yes, we can. We're a corporation. The Republican Party is a separate corporation. They own the primary. They can run it however the heck they want. People are confused because they listen to what the state says and they don't read the law. Read the law.
Read the law.
And you know that's true because the party told the state, if you don't put them on the ballot, we're running our own. Yes? That happened. So you know I'm right. You see where I'm going?
And just another thing, Dr. Frank, before we close up
Sure,
here.
sure. Yeah.
Please explain to the people that this is not Republican or Democrat.
Yes.
This is a combined effort to get these voter rolls cleaned up. It
Yeah.
benefits everyone.
I only just brought up the Republican Party the first time,
Right.
This is what I like to remind people. In 2016, after the 2016 election, who was screaming about election fraud?
Democrats.
Hillary Clinton. So for 4 years, we had Democrats screaming bloody murder about our elections. Then for 4 years, we had mostly Republicans screaming bloody murder. What are we going to do? Keep going back and forth? I think this is not a partisan issue. I always tell people, the state of Kentucky, everybody thinks some of them deep red. Oh yeah? They have 105% of their people registered. Okay.
There's something wrong there.
Oregon, everybody thinks of as a blue state. They have 105% of their people registered. This is not red versus blue. This is a problem with our election systems around the country. And I always tell them, it's not about Republicans or Democrats in leadership in your state. It's about whoever's in control, keep in control. They like the way it is. They don't want it. They don't want it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Right.
So, and I think the same thing here. There's no reason in my mind why you shouldn't have a precinct captain for every one of your precincts in Mesa County from the Republican Party and a precinct captain from the Democrats. If you had two in each precinct, and guess what? This is starting to sound like the way it used to be, huh? We had somebody from both party who maintained the precinct books in every precinct. Huh. And so in other words, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. We looked at the rolls. We agreed this is a clean copy of the rolls. We give it to the county clerk, and she says, okay, you guys have checked it out. That's the one we're going to use. If we're not perfect, okay, we're not perfect. Somebody didn't get their ballot. Okay, well, we're not trying to stop anybody. But both parties agreed this is a clean list. Both parties agree if every precinct did that, you'd save $300,000, $400,000 every election, and you'd dramatically reduce the chance of fraud in your election. So no, it's not R or D. I I've actually been it's been an eye opener for me. So remember how I told you how I had to like open the eyes in some of these small counties? One of the biggest eye openers to me was it's not about R&D. They almost mean nothing. In the state of Montana, where I just was, they have 50 senators, state senators. They just held their election in 2024. The Republicans won 32 to 18. So everybody was all excited. Good, we're going to have all this reform in Montana. The first week of their legislative session, 9 of the Republicans caucused with the Democrats. So it's not about R&D, is it?
Right.
It's about values. It's about. So anyway, how about that for a long rambling answer to
That's
your
a good answer.
to your
Thank
good
you.
question? It was a good question.
Well, I think we're finished for this time, but when you come back,
Okay.
we'll see
We
how
want
things
you
are
back
going.
again.
I'd
Yeah.
love to swing back because get you back on course and kind of keep the fire burning.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
very good.
Well, you've been watching Mesa County Compass. This is the facts as we know them, the truth as we see it. You decide. Thank you, Dr. Frank.
Thank you, Dr. Frank.
Pleasure being with you.